start. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to begin tonight's meeting by we, the Greater Shepparton City Council, begin today's meeting by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land which now comprises Greater Shepparton. We pay respect to their tribal elders, we celebrate their continuing culture, and we acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. Item number 2, which is our privacy notice. This public meeting is being streamed live via our Facebook page and made available for public access on our website, along with the official minutes of this meeting. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, it is assumed that your consent is given in the event that your image is broadcast to the public. It is also assumed that your consent is given to the use and disclosure of any information that you share at the meeting, including personal or sensitive information, to any person who accesses those recordings or minutes. Item number 3, apologies. Do we have any apologies tonight, councillors?
Mayor, I'm happy to move that the apologies from Councillor Orasvari and Councillor Sutton be noted and a leave of absence granted.
Much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Giovanetti. All those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, do we have any declarations of conflict of interest to declare tonight? No. Item number 5, the confirmation of minutes of the previous meetings. Is any item of the minutes opposed? No. Would a councillor please like to move the recommendation?
So moved, Madam Mayor. That the amended minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 20th of August 2019 as circulated be confirmed.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. All those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. We have no questions tonight, so we'll move over to page 2, item 7.1, reopening of South Down Street to through traffic. The recommendation is on page 2. Would a councillor please like to move a motion? Councillor Giovanetti.
Madam Mayor, I'm happy to move the recommendation on page 2.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Giovanetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. South Down Street was closed back in 2017 due to issues associated with the amount of dust that was emanating from the road at the time, which was unsealed. Since that time, there's been a new development that's gone into on the corner of Ford Road and South Down Street, and that has allowed for part of that road surface to be sealed and curb and channel put in. This motion basically states that Council will put a temporary seal on about 360 metres of South Down Street until such time as the developer further develops an area of land, and then that road, the formal sealing of that road would be their responsibility. And obviously, as part of the motion, we remove the temporary closure of South Down Street.
Thank you very much. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, it's been covered very well, but we did nearly wear a water truck out there for quite a few months trying to keep the dust down for the neighbours, and now it's good to see it progressed.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Sorry, would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, will now go to page 6, item 8.1, Community Planning Summary 2018-2019. There is also a recommendation on page 6. Would a councillor please like to move a motion? Councillor Patterson?
Yes, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 6. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Adam. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, this is noting the achievements of the Greater Shepparton Community Plan. It's been a great success for approximately 7 or 8 years. We've had community plans. They've worked really well. We have, I think, 10 small towns now, 4 neighbourhood plans and 3 locality plans. So we've pretty well got the whole place covered as far as getting input from the groups that live in these particular areas. The concept is that we get the people that actually do live in these small towns and localities to basically get themselves together and decide in their own community what they want, and that's where we come in and support them. So it's worked really well. It's been very successful, and it continues on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. I just want to endorse Councillor Patterson's comments. I think this is a great program. It really assists council in understanding the community needs. It's working well, and I hope it continues on.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. As we now go to page 17, item 8.2, the Shepparton Art Museum Advisory Committee membership. The recommendation is also on page 17. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Happy to move the recommendation as printed on page 17 of the agenda.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Giovanetti. Councillor Hazen, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. Look, it's a logical decision we're making here, given the ultimate transition to the new SAM and the issues around the terms of reference for the SAM Advisory Committee, given that this committee meets on a 6-weekly basis 8 times a year to make recommendations, endorse the artworks to be acquired for the SAM collection. It was illogical to think that one of the members would, their term would expire and then you'd be seeking new applications for the committee for a very short period of time. So it's logical to extend the term of the current member, and I think this is a very good outcome for council and the committee.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hazelman. Councillor Giovanetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, Madam Mayor. Councillor Hazelman's covered it very well.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, will now go to page 19, item 8.3, the Greater Shepparton Women's Charter Advisory Committee membership appointments. The recommendation is also on page 19. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Abdullah.
I would like to move the recommendation on page 19 as a motion that the Council appoint the following community members to the Greater Shepparton Women's Charter Advisory Committee for a period of 2 years, commencing on 18 September 2019 and concluding on 19 July 2021. I'll just speak out the first names: Angela, Mariam, Marwa and Anna.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor.
Second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Giovanetti. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yep, thank you. So these appointments, the recommendation for these appointments are for the 4 vacant positions. So we have 4 candidates for 4 positions, and the recommendation is for the appointment for a period of 2 years. It is really great to see that the Women's Advisory Committee is following its guiding principles of diversity, and through these recommended nominations, I can see that that it's going to bring a level of diversity to the committee, and there's a good balance of experienced and new members through these nominations. So we'll have some fresh ideas, but our existing knowledge would also be retained. So it's pleasing to see that balance. And of course, in terms of diversity, I'm very pleased to see that the committee is achieving a very sort of remarkable level of diversity in terms of cultural diversity, age diversity, and women coming from different working backgrounds. So and they all contribute to the robust debates and decision-making process of the committee. So really would like to welcome these new nominations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Giovanetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Couldn't add anything further, Madam Mayor.
Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors will now go to page 22, item 9.1, the Shepparton Show Me Committee membership. The recommendation is also on page 22. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Adam?
Yes, I think I'll move the recommendation on page 22.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I think it's all in the summary there. Basically, there were 6 positions available. There were 7 interested parties, and we've decided to add 5. And the names are Mr. Simon Quattrocchi, Mr. Andrew Pogue, Miss Helen Sofra, Christina Marco, and Zane Foote. All people who have been involved with Shep Show Me for quite a while. Very productive, and I'm very happy to have them on board.
Thank you very much. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, just make comment that Christa Marco and Zane Foote are having 1-year terms, and the others are having a 2-year term, which get a consistent role of personnel through there, which is a good thing rather than have a complete change every 2 years.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 27, item 9.2, the August 2019 monthly financial report. The recommendation is also on page 27. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? And I would like to move that. Councillor Patterson, what would you like to move?
Yes, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 27 that Council receive and note the August 2019 monthly financial report.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Giovanetti. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, it's all moving on quite well. We're tracking in our preferred range, and more importantly, the state government's preferred range. Capital works are slow, as they always are this time of year. Tenders are out and waiting to come in before we fill the budget and get the jobs done by the end of the financial year. One thing worth noting is the 10 monthly payments. They kick in on the 30th of September. A lot of people have, when we first brought that in 2 years ago or 3 years ago, there was a bit of a backlash from the ratepayers. They weren't so excited about it, but they've accepted it really well. No one likes paying rates, let's face it, but this is a really good way of paying it. It's my preferred option, and a lot of people are doing it now, so the rate revenue will start to flow a lot quicker now as those payments come in. And I'd like to ask Chris Teitzel if you'd like to add to that, please.
Councillors, I'm not sure there's much more I can add from what Dennis has said tonight. He's done a very good
good
job of that. Completely stolen my thunder. There's no significant variances that I need to draw your attention to at this stage. We are still early in the financial year, and Dennis covered it very, very well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Giovanetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, far be it from me to interrupt what Councillor Patterson has just given us.
Okay, thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 29, item 9.3, the Council Plan 2018-2019 Quarter 4 Progress Report. The recommendation is also on page 29. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Abdullah.
I would like to move the recommendation on page 29 as a motion that the Council note the progress report for the 2017-2021 Council Plan, which provides details in relation to achieving the measure of success identified in the Council Plan 2017 to 2021.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, quickly. The Council Plan 2017 to 2021 identified key strategic objectives and in 5 domains, including leadership, economic, social, built and environment. Now, in each quarter since 2017, these objectives are reviewed and monitored by the Council. And this progress report is a part of accountability framework, and it provides insights into how well we are progressing on our KPIs. So the KPIs were also set to achieve the key strategic objectives. If you look at the report, the progress report, there are against each KPI there are target scores and the actual scores, and actual is actually indicated by green, and wherever it's below the target, it's a red mark. So I've looked through the report, and it's in some areas do need some improvements. For instance, in terms of one of the KPIs around maturity of council asset management practices and processes. So since September 18 to June 19, it has been below the target. So that's perhaps an area. It is definitely an area of improvement. And if you look at the progress report, there is a commentary also around what needs to be done to put it back on track. Similarly, there are some indicators which are really good and very pleasing to know. For instance, overall council's direction. So the target was for a score of 47, whereas in actual terms, we have achieved a score of 60. So this is a fantastic improvement. So that's the way we track progress of our council plan, and yeah, I'm happy to endorse the progress report.
Thank you very much. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just roughly, Councillor Abdul has done a very good job. There's 44 out of 52 that are on target. We made a conscious decision as a council when we set our targets for our plan for the year, or the 4 years. We didn't have a lot of motherhood statements in there. There were things that we could actually tick off. We could see we've done and completed, and we're working down that path. And I still believe that the way we set that up was the correct way of going. The previous plan had a lot of, as I said, motherhood statements, and you could tick them off and say, yes, I've done that. There's a lot more practical things there now, and yeah, it's progressing very well. We've got 12 months to complete it, thereabouts, so yes, we have to keep moving on it.
Okay, thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 32, item 9.4, Instrument of Delegation of the Chief Executive Officer. The recommendation is also on page 32. Would a council like to move a motion, please?
Madam Mayor,
Councillor Giovanetti. Councillor Giovanetti.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to move the recommendation on page 32. Look, I won't read it out because there are 6 items associated with it. If you wish me to read it out, I will.
No, that's fine.
Right.
Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Adam. Councillor Giovanetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a procedural process that we need to go through with council. Obviously, councillors don't make all the decisions. Many of the decisions are delegated through to the CEO, who in turn delegates them to the respective relevant staff members. And this is a document that, or an instrument of delegation that we give to the CEO that outlines what powers have been delegated to him and what he can delegate to other staff. So it's a procedural process, so it's reasonably straightforward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. It is very straightforward, actually, but it's a very important motion that we're voting on. It allows the CEO, obviously, we're handballing to him basically the decisions that we can't make day to day, and then from that point forward they get sent down the line. So it's important in that respect. Yes, we don't make those decisions, but it's a big decision to allow the CEO then to carry out the delegation as we will do. So, yes.
Thank you very much, Councillor Adam. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Patterson.
I'd just like to add to our 2 councillors that have done a terrific job on that, but it does come back, any delegation does come back to council, as we'll see later in our agenda, that have been passed through our endorsement. So if the CEO and the staff don't have an open chequebook, they can run around and play a hell of a big stick. We do have control. So
thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 35, item 9.5, Instrument of Delegation, Members of Staff and Development Hearings Panel. The recommendations are on page 35 and page 36. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Giovanetti.
Happy to move the recommendation on page 35, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Hazelman. Pages 35 and 36.
36,
yep.
I apologise.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Hazelman.
Well, having just said what we just said a couple of minutes ago, this is something that's slightly different. This instrument of delegation is to members of the staff of the Development Planning Panel. Now, this is one area that the CEO cannot delegate. We can't delegate his powers to the planning panel. Council is required to delegate to the relevant planning staff to act on council's behalf on these particular issues.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hazeman, would you like to speak to the
Not
motion?
this time, Madam Mayor, no.
Thank you. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 39, item 9.6, the Council Law Expenses and Entitlements Policy. The recommendation is on page 39. Would a council like to move a motion, please? Councillor Patterson.
Yes, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 39. I've got glasses there, I should have them on. That council adopt the council expenses and entitlements policy 37.POL3.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, this is just an update after an audit council I had, making sure we haven't got our heads in the trough, and believe me, there's no trough there to get your head into. It's getting to the stage, it's probably going a little bit far, I believe, in some ways, but it's state government, there's nothing we can do about it. It's nearly the stage now, if you have sauce on your sausage roll, you've got to sign for it. So it's getting very, very tight regulations. I certainly appreciate that it's ratepayers' money we're working at, but it is getting to the stage where you've sort of got to sign for everything these days, and I can see both sides of it, and I just like tomato sauce, so unfortunately I'm signing a lot. So yes, I'll recommend it and move it.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Patterson. You have covered it well. A few points I would just like to highlight about this policy. Obviously, this policy provides guidelines around councillor entitlements and expenses that they're allowed to make. Some of them include councillor allowances, professional development, and participation in events and training programs. So that's good to know. Some of the I think one of the additions is also around the entitlement for the parking permit, and it's good to see that included in the policy, so for better guidance and clarification. The other important and useful information for current councillors and also for those who are aspiring to nominate themselves for the next local government elections is to see that what are the entitlements, and also especially for some candidates, they would be encouraged to see that this policy covers dependent care, which means council will reimburse the cost of dependent care expenses incurred by councillors when attending ordinary council meeting, briefings, and other official engagements. So I believe this is a very important document, not only for current councillors, but also for those who are aspiring to be councillors in the next term. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Summer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's just a couple of points I can't really accept. I'd like to foreshadow a motion if this is lost, in the event that it's lost, that the council adopt the councillor expenses and entitlement policy 37.POL3 with the following change, that the requirement for councillors to get written approval from the majority of councillors before obtaining legal advice be removed.
Thank you.
Okay. So basically the reason behind that, when we moved that, it was back in 2015, and it's a very good example of a poorly considered solution to a short-term problem at the time. It was in response to issues with the then CEO. Funny that it was on April the 1st, because I don't think it's done anyone many favours. I mean, to have the majority of councillors before you can go and get some legal advice does seem to me to be unfair, and it has eventuated that way. It has the potential for councillors to maybe abuse the privilege if you consider that perhaps the majority of councillors wouldn't agree to legal advice that might undermine a decision, or if it was pointing a finger at a mistake they may have made. And I think that asking a single councillor to have to pay for legal advice puts them at a significant disadvantage when they may have a very good point that isn't backed up with the weight of evidence. As an example of that, there's an ongoing complaint against me right now where the majority of councillors elected to receive legal advice. They had the majority and I didn't have the recourse to legally defend myself. And funny enough, the legal advice that they received indicated I probably didn't do anything wrong, but still chose to ignore that advice at a cost to ratepayers and issue me with a warning anyway, and that is still under dispute. So in that situation, it's highly unlikely that the majority of councillors will agree that I could get legal advice to dispute this, which puts me at a gross disadvantage. And I also think that that clause is potentially against the Local Government Act, because that clearly states councillors must not make any decision outside of a council meeting. Our only power is during these meetings. And the organisation seems comfortable with that provision, but that's just based on opinion. I can't go and get legal advice because it's just me, which is kind of making my point. So I'd like that point struck, and possibly if I have to, if this is unsuccessful, I'll have to come back and move it again as a notice of motion at a later date. But there's other things in here as well. I mean, we rarely use our training allocation, which was $8,000 each, and now it's being combined as one big pool. And I'm not sure how that's going to work and what risks, whether we've mitigated enough risk there. It's very selective in how it seems to be decided who gets what. I did have a modest request for assistance in a diploma for public health in primary care nursing, and that was rejected. So...
Time.
Okay.
Do you want an extension,
I'd like
Councillor?
some more time if I could.
All those in favour for an extension of time? Granted.
Also, there's $1,000 in there that is called a necessary expense, but I'm not quite sure what that is. It just seems unclear. It lacks transparency and accountability. I mean, where does it go? What's it for? You know, that sort of thing. And the provision of only getting one phone, that puts the individual councillors at risk again of being unable to perform our duties. Technology is updated very quickly. It's a 4-year term. Accidents happen, phones get lost, and not everybody can afford to replace them. So... yeah, I'm not a fan of it. I'm grateful we had more time by putting it on the table to consider, but I'm still not happy. So I'm rejecting it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Summer. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Would any
Madam Mayor,
Thank you,
I'd like
Adam.
to make a few comments.
Adam.
Look, this report was generated from the audit that was conducted by the Victorian Auditor General's Office recently, and there were some recommendations out of that report. That being said, we were not found to be in breach of our own policy, or any policy in fact, but there was recommendations made and advice given that we could tighten up some areas. So I agree. I think it's good that we should tighten up some areas that potentially could lead to some issues, but we've been pretty good at this council, I think, over many years. Some of the other councils weren't found to be as well behaved, and that's been addressed by the local government people. So, look, yeah, I've got no issue with it whatsoever. I think it's good.
Thank you very much, Councillor Adam. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Patterson, would you like your right of reply?
No, thank you.
We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried. Councillors, now go to item page 41, item 9.7, taking of the question from the table, the election caretaker provisions policy. There's a recommendation. If someone would like to move that, please.
I'm happy to move the recommendation as printed on page 41.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please?
Read that out, Councillor Hazel. It's only 8 words.
I could.
A second.
Happy to second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Would you like to speak to the motion?
I might be being accused of being pedantic if I commented that in the space of a month a recommendation has become a question. But I won't. That'd be nitpicking to be in the extreme. Look, the legal advice we got as a result of what happened at the last council meeting indicates that there needs to be a recommendation to take the recommendation off the table as was moved, so I'm more than happy to do so.
Thank you very much. Councillor Devaney, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just basically, Madam Mayor, that the reason why it was taken off the table was that a councillor had a request for more information that hadn't been received at the time, so therefore we asked for it to be left on the table. That matter has now been resolved, so
thank you very much.
solve it.
Does any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried unopposed. So we'll now go to page 42, 9.8, Election Caretaker Provisions Policy. The recommendation is also on page 42. Would a council like to move a motion, please?
Yes, so moved, Madam Mayor. I'll move the recommendation on page 42 that states that the council adopt the Election Caretaker Provisions Policy 37.POL4.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Giovanetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, as mentioned, Madam Mayor, this was left on the table from last meeting. The information that was required has now been received. The reason for the change in the policy is that there's some minor additions that have been requested, and that council attends that relate to council attendance at committee meetings, community information sessions and small town catch-ups, and dispute resolution procedures have been amended. So that's the purpose of putting this up tonight.
Thank you very much. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just a little bit of background on it. The whole policy is designed to not give any sitting councillor an advantage of any sort in an upcoming election, which is fair enough. There's no issue there. I don't think anyone has an issue with it. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Summer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I'd like to foreshadow a motion, if this one's lost, that councillors adopt the Election Caretaker Provisions Policy 37.POL.4 with the following omission: that the last paragraph on page 9 of the document be removed. So I'll read that out. Any dispute resolution procedures which had commenced but were not yet resolved prior to the election period will be placed on hold. If re-elected, the councillors involved may proceed with the dispute resolution once they have formally resumed their position as councillors. So I think that's a pretty sneaky way to put that in there, but ultimately it implies that any dispute that's in place prior to the election period will be dropped if the people in question are no longer councillors. So what's to stop councillors or the organisation from drawing out complaints until the matter is lost during caretaker provisions? Any grievance brought about under our role as councillors must be seen through until a resolution is reached. Retrospective rights must apply under any other law. And to use my last example of the complaint, I will not be running again for council, but I'd like the opportunity to clear my name from an alleged complaint, regardless of whether or not I'm re-elected. I think it will open a can of worms that may pressure some people to run again, just so they're in a position to reach a resolution. It's also very unnecessary, that paragraph, because dispute resolution procedures are set out in the Act, as well as the Code of Conduct. And I actually believe we'll be in breach of the Act if we pass this motion with that in there, because I don't see how you can cut a complaint off on the basis of not being re-elected. So I'm a hard no on that one as well, I'm afraid.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried. Councillors, we'll now go to page 45, item 9.9, contracts awarded under delegation and contracts advertised but yet to be awarded. The recommendation is also on page 45. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please?
Madam Mayor, I'm happy to move the recommendation on page 45. Council note, tendered contracts awarded under delegated authority by the CEO, contracts awarded under delegated authority by a director, and requests for tenders advertised but not yet awarded.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Adam.
Second that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Giovanetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Straightforward, Madam Mayor. We speak to this every month, that we are given a list of the contracts that have been awarded over the past month and a list of outstanding tenders that haven't been closed at this point in time. It's interesting to note there's some reasonably quiet month for tenders this particular month. But as Councillor Patterson mentioned earlier, there's quite a bit of works that have been tendered out in relation to the capital works budget. So we will wait with interest to see what when some of the big stuff comes in.
Thank you very much. Councillor Giovanetti. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to say, Madam Mayor, that yes, a couple of pages seems a bit thin in this agenda, but normally it's 2 or 3 or 4 pages. But it's just a measure of what we're doing out there in our community, and yeah, I'm sure we'll get busier into the future. So
thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors will now go to page 49, item 9.2, the ordinary council meeting dates. The recommendation is also on page 49. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Patterson, would you like to move?
Yes, I'd like to move the motion on page 49 that Council endorse that no ordinary council meeting be held in January 2020, with the last ordinary council meeting of 2019 being held on Tuesday the 17th of December and the cycle resuming on Tuesday the 18th of February 2020.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I look forward to this conversation every year. We have a robust debate about the joys of having a January meeting and what will happen now. I will suggest that if we do need a meeting, we're all happy to come back, and there's a fair chance Councillor Hazen will jump in and say we should be having it anyway. Then it'll go to the vote and it'll probably end up being 8-1. I don't know. Sorry.
Point of order, please. Can you please get back on track?
I'm saving us
I don't think
time.
you should be able to speak on behalf of Councillor Hazeman. Thank you very much.
You've done a good job.
Okay.
I don't mind.
Okay.
I'll rest my case in a minute.
Thank you. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion, please?
No, thanks. It's self-explanatory. Thank you.
Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor?
I will, Madam Mayor. Look, it's become almost traditional now to oppose it. And I think everyone's heard the argument year on year. I think it boils down to what looks to be, in my mind, a lack of professionalism by not having a meeting in January. I'm pretty sure most of the big corporations around town will still hold their monthly board meetings and so forth. Business doesn't stop just because it's January, and it might be an agenda that is very short on for content, but I think it shows that if we held a meeting in January that the council is open for business.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion?
Yeah, look, like this is Groundhog Day again. But yes, I support Councillor Hazelman's comments exactly. Some say it's a token. If we could have it, it would be a token meeting. I don't agree. As Councillor Hazelman said, it could be a shorter meeting, less content, but it should be a meeting. And Councillor Patterson, we've said, well, you know, if there's an urgent matter that needs attending, we can call people back. But if people know they're away for 2 months, they could be overseas, they could be uncontactable, it could be all sorts of reasons why we couldn't form a quorum for a meeting. So, no, I think we should have it in January, although I don't feel confident that this will actually eventuate.
Thank you very much. Would any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to speak against the motion as I did last year. I concur with Councillor Hazeman and Councillor Adam in relation to their remarks. I think it does show a lack of professionalism that we don't have a meeting in January. As Councillor Adam has said, that it may be only a very short agenda, but the fact of the matter is I think it's imperative that we do have a meeting in January just so that we can keep everything ticking over as it should be.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Summer.
I better say something just because it was a close vote last time. I'm just thinking at the end of the year, we've worked really, really hard. The staff deserve a break. We deserve a break. I mean, some of us work, some of us have families. We want to go away, and we've been tied to this desk for the whole year. So it would be nice just to have that little bit of a break and just give that workplace culture a boost because they deserve it just as much as we do.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? I'll actually just speak to the motion. It is noted in the agenda that it is a very quiet time of year for council and that we often do have very limited staff over that month. As has been pointed out, we can call a council meeting, a special council meeting at any time, and we all know that that's definitely the possibility that does happen, can happen. So yes, I certainly support the recommendation due to the resources that we often have over that month. Councillor Patterson, would you like your right of reply?
Just quickly, I think Councillor Summer hit on it, and also you, Madam Mayor. Meetings just don't happen. There's a lot of work goes into a meeting. and it comes from the staff that have to front up and get everything ready. There's legal requirements to a meeting. You can't just call one straight away. So there's a lot of work, and that has an impact. Most of the staff have families. They want to go away and do their stuff too. So I know probably I care about the staff a lot more than some of the councils here. That's not very much time. But it is something we really should be conscious of, that we're going to make these people work the first week in January and they don't want to. I don't think so. And I'm sure those staff would be very happy if something come up to put the work in. I have no doubt about that. But until that happens, I don't support having a meeting in January.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried.
Groundhog Day.
Getting closer.
Councillors will now go to page 51. The recommendation is also on page 51 of item 911, 2019-2020 Christmas arrangements. Would a council like to move a motion, please?
I'm happy to move the recommendation on page 51, Madam Mayor. The council resolved to close the council offices at 3 p.m. on Tuesday the 24th of December 2019 and reopen at 8:15 Thursday 2nd of January 2020.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Seconder, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Giovanetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Every year the council offices close down, and contrary to what Councillor Patterson just said before, many of us do have concerns in relation to the staff and their need for the time off, and this is part and parcel of it. So, yeah, I don't need to say any more than that.
Sorry. I'm sorry, I was interrupted, Councillor.
Yeah, no, I'll get it right, I finished.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Yes, I'd just like to add that there's lots of services that council do provide are still operational all through that. Our pools, etc., our pound, etc., all operates right through that period. So there's only the general office. There's a number there for emergencies. So council is still active during that time, but generally everyone's been very festively mooded. I think I said that right.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against a motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion?
Madam Mayor, I'll speak to the motion, I think. I just want to note that it's amazing that we're coming back on the 2nd of January. That indicates to me there'll be plenty of staff here, yet in 15 days' time we couldn't prepare a meeting.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Any councillor wish to speak against the motion? We will now... Sorry, would you like your right of reply, Councillor Giovanetti?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried. Unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 53, item 9.2, the financial statements and performance statement for year ended 30th of June 2019. Now, I think Mr Harriott has a comment to make in regard to the recommendation.
We've just realised that Councillor Sutton will not be back until I think the 1st of October, and these statements need to be signed off before then. So we're suggesting that under item 2, authorise the Mayor and myself, but we need another councillor instead of Councillor Sutton. Perhaps Councillor Hazelman might be interested as a member of the Audit Committee.
Can do that.
So if we could substitute Councillor Hazelman for Councillor Sutton, the recommendation is basically as it is.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hazelman's happy with that. Would someone like to move the recommendation to Councillor Abdullah?
I would like to move the recommendation on page 53 as a motion that the Council, number 1, approve in principle the financial statements and performance statement for the financial year ended 30th June 2019 and authorise the Mayor, Councillor Kim O'Keefe, and Councillor Hazelman and the Chief Executive Peter Harriott to certify the financial statements and to certify the performance statement in their final form after any changes recommended or agreed to by the auditor have been made.
Very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Adam. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I would like to say thanks a big thanks to our finance team and our audit and risk committee for their hard work in completing the process of annual financial reporting. This is a statutory requirement to submit Council's annual financial statements and performance statement to VAGO and the Minister. This is an important reporting obligation, and it demonstrates the principle of good governance. The approval by the councillors for these annual financial statements and performance statement basically takes into account the review and recommendation of our Audit and Risk Management Committee. The annual financial statements are audited by external auditors, and then they provide a closing report to the ARC committee, and the ARC also have had a meeting with the external auditors to discuss about any audit issues and if they are addressed. So basically, the certification is that the account represents the true and fair view of Council's financial position, and they have been prepared in accordance with Australian accounting standards. So given the robustness of the audit and review process, I am comfortable to move the recommendation as a motion. And given the audit, having seen the auditor's closing report, where there have not been any issues of material misstatements. So that's the recommendation about, and I'm also very pleased to see the performance statement here, and it's a quick read and very useful and informative document on the performance of Council in the financial year 2018 and 2019. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abdul. And I just please, sorry, I forgot to note that in the performance statement on page 3, under statutory planning decision-making, council planning decisions upheld at VCAT is 100%, sorry, not 75% as originally printed. So please note that. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Would any council wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, we now go to item 10.1 on page 56, the draft Shepparton and Marootna 2050 Regional City Growth Plan for 2019. Please note that in the recommendation, point 2, a period of 4 weeks is to be changed for a period of 6 weeks. I get that? Is to be changed. So a period of 4 weeks is to be changed for a period of 6 weeks. Would someone like to move a motion, please? Councillor Patterson?
Yes, I'd like to move the motion. I won't read it all out, but I will read section 2 out. Authorise for exhibition of the draft Shepparton Marootna 2050 Regional City Growth Plan 2019 public comment for a period of 6 weeks commencing on the 20th of September 2019 and concluding on the 7th of November. Got that right.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please?
The 8th of November will make that, actually. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'm happy to second that, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Giovannetti. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, there's an awful lot of work gone into this. This is basically a map until 2050 of where development is going to occur. And if you think what has to happen to have everything ready for 2050, there's a lot of work to be done on design, etc. That will take a lot of work. So this is going out for consultation. We want everyone to have a look at it, get their input into it, into us, and they have 6 weeks, and we'll go from there.
Thank you very much. Councillor Giovannetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Briefly, Madam Mayor, as Councillor Patterson said, it is a very important document. For a municipality the size of Greater Shepparton and the growth that we're experiencing throughout the municipality, I think it's very important for us to ensure that all of our residential, commercial and industrial needs are set out in a fashion that we can continue the growth of the municipality. I think that's all I need.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion?
Madam Mayor, just a point of clarification. The preamble to the recommendation states it is recommended that the council endorse the growth plan and release public comment. So the actual content of the recommendation doesn't use the word endorse. It's just a matter of us putting it out for public consultation for 6 weeks. So am I clear in understanding that? We're not endorsing this, are we?
For it to go out to public consultation.
Authorising for exhibition.
We're receiving and noting it and then authorising for exhibition, correct? Yes. Not endorsing
For
it.
exhibition, as
Yes.
we've done in the past.
Endorse just confused me.
Against the motion, or
No, just a point of clarification.
thank you very much. Would any council wish to speak against the motion?
Madam Mayor, RFI point in relation to the end date. I understand that the 6 weeks period runs between the 20th of September and the 1st of November as printed in the recommendation. Correct me, those dates should stay and it's the 4 to 6 that needs to be amended.
Change,
I
yeah.
have to apologise, I had a very average mathematics teacher at school.
That's fine, no, that's all good. So if we're understanding of that.
Thank you very much, Mr Harrod. I think that's clear. Would any council wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Summon?
Pretty exciting document. It's going to be near impossible to accurately gauge where we'll be in 50 years or it's going to be pretty amazing. So in 2050 we'll have a very different world. Hopefully we'll have some fast rail, hopefully we'll have some freight air transport, hopefully we'll have some secure water. I know a lot of pockets in the community are concerned about climate change, so if there was any kind of remedial things that can happen there, we'd like to hear from people. Sustainable waste disposal, we know that's ongoing and we're in a growing municipality, so we need to keep a close eye on that. How we're going to grow, whether we go up or we keep this urban sprawl, the small towns, services, that immigration, we need to keep up with services for all of the people here. Just public health in general, if we keep our eyes on the determinants of health, then we should be able to get a pretty good plan together, but we can only do that with the public's involvement. It's broad, but we want to hear about any possibility and any thoughts that people have. So there's plenty of time to submit, and I hope people do.
Thank you very much, Councillor Summer. Would any council wish to speak against the motion? Would any council wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 62, item 10.2, adoption of amendment C211 to the Greater Shepparton Planning Scheme. There is a recommendation also on page 63. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Would any councillor like to move a motion?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to move the recommendation as printed on page 63.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Hayes, would you like to speak to the motion?
Madam Mayor, in brief commentary, and I suppose it's by exception, this has been through a planning panel, and now, if adopted by council, will be submitted to the Minister for Planning for approval and incorporation into our planning scheme. The reason I say by exception is that it's a little bit unusual, but not totally unusual, that on this occasion the full extent of the planning panel hasn't been adopted. There's been a variation to that, and that's been outlined in some detail in the report. It's been an extensive process, and I think that the process we've gone through has been a good one, and the planning panel has added significant value to the outcome. So I would endorse the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'd just like to add that this will help expedite the whole project, which is very important. It's a very big project, 23 million, I think, and it's going to have a big effect on our Aboriginal development, and the sooner the better. So if this helps it, makes it quicker, all believe.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried unopposed. As we now go to item... Sorry, just get my right page here. Is it on page 76? Item 10.3, the planning permit application 2019-10 for a 2-lot subdivision at 7185 Goulburn Valley Highway, Kyalla West. There is a recommendation on page 78. Would a council like to move a motion, please?
And Mayor, I'm happy to move the recommendation on page 78, which states, in relation to the planning application 2019-10, on the basis of the information before the Council and having considered all relevant matters as required by the Planning and Environment Act 1987, Council resolves to refuse the application on the following grounds. The proposal does not support the purposes of Clause 3507, farming zone, to provide for the use of land for agriculture and to encourage the retention of agricultural land. 2, the proposal represents an unacceptable outcome with respect to Clause 35.07-6, decision guidelines of the farming zone, as it has not been appropriately demonstrated how the proposal relates to sustainable land management, how the proposal would support or enhance agricultural production, or how the proposed lots would have the capacity to sustain an agricultural use. And 3, the proposal is not in accordance with local planning policy, in particular Clause 26.06-1, as it would result in the further fragmentation of land within the farming zone, and therefore has the potential to impact on the productivity of agricultural land, which underpins the local economy of Greater Shepparton.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Anyone like to
Yes,
second?
Madam Mayor, I'll second the motion.
Councillor Hazelman. Councillor Giovanetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. We've had presentations by council staff on this matter, also from the applicant and from objectors to this particular application. And I think it's all pretty much well summed up in the staff's response, in that it states that it is considered the proposal is inconsistent with the objectives for rural subdivision and protection of agricultural land and does not appropriately address the considerations for subdivisions in the Regional Rural Land Use Strategy and Greater Shepparton Planning Scheme, as it will lead to the fragmentation of agricultural land and does not adequately provide for the future use of the land for agriculture. The proposal is not considered to be consistent with local policy objectives that relate to the protection of productive agricultural land, the subdivision of the land to create 2 lots of approximately 40 hectares each outside the settlement boundary should not be supported, as the application has not adequately demonstrated how the proposal will support the ongoing use or enhancement of the land for agriculture, particularly in relation to proposed Lot 2, and no specific proposal for Lot 2 has been identified, and the whole farm plan submitted with the application is based on the existing lot layout, meaning the pivot irrigation system could be implemented without the need to subdivide the land.
Thank you very much, Councillor Giovanetti. Councillor Hazelman, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think if I speak, I'm only going to be summarising what Councillor Giovanetti said, but in short, I think what the officers have put forward indicates the proposal will not guarantee the retention of land for agricultural purposes. The application does not demonstrate how the proposed Lot 2 constitutes a viable farming lot, and the proposed subdivision would lead to the fragmentation of agricultural land. That's, in a summary, what the officers are recommending. It also indicates, if you read through from both the applicant and the objectors, these matters of rural subdivision becomes very contentious, and a lot of people look at this in terms of people should have the right to do with their land as they see fit. That would obviously lead to some terrible outcomes. Hence, what the officers are recommending to me is a fair and reasonable outcome.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Summer?
I have to disagree with what's just been said. I think it's a completely reasonable proposal. I'm in favour of granting the subdivision. There's a pivot irrigation system on Lot 1, and we've been shown this. It clearly supports the use of agricultural pursuits and clearly demonstrates sustainable land management. The second lot, it'll still be owned by the applicant. The only reason that's consistent with an argument in any way, which I think is a bit flimsy, is that it's an irregular shape. I mean, it has the correct surface area, and that complies with the legislation. And if you look at this map that's been provided to us, there's quite a few irregular shapes. I mean, they're dotted everywhere. I don't think it's going to hold up at VCAT that it looks funny. You can put any amount of animal on there and it would still comply with farming. If it's a case of maybe finding difficulty in getting a buyer who wants that land, then I believe that's outside the scope of our consideration that's a matter of buyers beware. That's the applicant's land, and if he would like to hold on to it, he can, or if it does sell, good on him. I mean, that's really not our business. It might be interfering a bit too much in here. Subdivisions all across that area are far smaller than what's proposed here, and albeit it might be different zoning, but eventually, as you can see, this is the trend. So it's really not unreasonable. That is quite a lot larger than all of the other parcels of land which are just across the road. There were no objections from the CFA, no objections from the Goulburn Broken Catchment Management Authority, no objections from Goulburn Murray Water, none from Powercore, and none from Vic Roads. So why on earth are we objecting? I'm very confused as to why we're refusing it. There were some concerns about road access that came across in objections, but as far as I can see, it will remain unchanged, which makes that point completely moot. Our report even says, and this is a quote out of the report, if there is an issue, they're talking about the road, then this is an existing matter that would need to be resolved by the two parties should they wish to rectify the situation, i.e. it is not an issue created by the proposed subdivision. So if this application was challenged at VCAT, I think we'd be spending a lot of ratepayers' money and end up losing. Ethically, I don't think I can vote against it, and I urge all of you to consider that and do the same and allow this man to subdivide his land.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Adam?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Summer stole a lot of my words. Thank you, Councillor Summer. Yeah, look, in short, the adjoining properties to this proposal here are all of similar size, 40 hectares, from what I gather. The rural land use strategy is not finite in its recommendations as to what... it is finite in the actual numbers, but there's numerous examples around our district of much smaller holdings. Naturally, those people have probably presented a case to council, to the planners, that supports an agricultural pursuit, that they seem that our planning authority or our planning people seem to accept. As I said, the surrounding properties are all 40 hectares. This is a bit of a caught in the middle type affair, really. And yes, I agree, one of those blocks that will be subdivided potentially is of an irregular shape, but as I said earlier on to some of the councillors, I don't feel cows have got any issue with walking around corners. So that being said, and what Councillor Summer also said, I fully support, so I will, I'm against this particular refusal.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Patterson.
Yes, not very often I go against the planners, and it's probably less often I agree with Councillor Summer on a lot of planning issues. But I think what her points are very valid, the ones I thought of. There's been lots of objectors to this, but really there's nothing here that really stacks up at VCAT as far as I'm concerned. There's access being granted through the property to that. That is now legal access, so there's now that's not a stopper. I'd hope if they weren't happy to negotiate a different entrance. But as far as having an object, a piece of land that's not square, that doesn't come into it. You know, there's plenty of pieces of land that tractors go around corners and straighten up and go crooked. There's discussion that the new owner might decide to develop it. Well, you know, if that happens, well, that'll come before council again, and we'll address that issue then. But currently, there's nothing there that I believe we can knock back that wouldn't stand up at VCAT.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Abdullah?
I would be just repeating what Councillor Summer, Councillor Patterson and Councillor Diniadem has said. And again, as Councillor Patterson has said, perhaps this is the first occasion that I would find it would be going against the planning recommendation. The only reason being that looking at this report and reading the objections, I could not find a convincing argument about the demonstration of the future use of the land for agriculture that has not been demonstrated adequately, and so I was finding it very hard to come up with a convincing argument. The recommendation is vague in a sense that to me it's about the subdivision of land, and we have seen there are other blocks of land also of the same size, and if the argument is about it's not large enough and it's fragmented, how large is large and how small is large, so I'm not sure whether we have the exact definition of parameters. And I do understand that the sustainability and viability of agricultural land is important, but perhaps on this occasion we do not have very clear guidelines. So I would be going against this recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Giovannetti, would you like your right of reply?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, the vote in the affirmative probably doesn't look all that flash at the moment. The only thing I can state in relation to what some of the other councillors have raised is that the pivot irrigation system can be still put in, even if the plots aren't subdivided. And as for the properties on the eastern side of the highway, I think we'll find that those smaller subdivisions were probably approved in a previous planning scheme, not necessarily this one.
Okay, thank you very much. We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against?
Please, Madam Mayor.
Motion lost. We'll now go to division. Those in favour, we have Councillor Hazelman, we have Councillor Giovannetti. Those against, we have Councillor Summer, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Abdullah, Councillor Adam and Councillor O'Keefe. So the motion is lost.
What do you do now?
That's lost. We'll see what happens next time. Ask the Mayor.
So in respect of that item, Madam Mayor, what happens now?
So we will bring that back for discussion.
Future meeting.
We don't have a decision in relation to a planning matter, so you're a planning authority, you still need to make a decision, so this will have to be brought back.
Correct.
Thank you very much. Councillors, we now go to page 95, item 10.4, planning permit application 2018-264, two-lot subdivision at 560 Archer Road, Kyalla. There is a recommendation. Page 96. Would the council like to move a motion?
Madam Mayor, I would like to move a motion to defer this recommendation. We need more information, and I believe we need more time to consider some of the aspects of this application which are not clear enough through this report. So I would move a motion to defer.
How would you like to do that?
I'd like to lay the matter
Lay it on the table.
I would like to lay the matter on the table.
Write the motion down and read from the written motion. That will help our minute takers get that accurately recorded, please.
Okay, so Sema.
Councillor Abdullah would just like to take a moment to write that down and then read from that, and we can record that, please.
Passed up to the Mayor.
Councillor Abdullah, if you'd like to read that motion out, just so it's clear.
I would like to move a motion to defer the decision on this application and lay the motion on the table. Is that correct?
Very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Summer.
Yeah, on the table.
All right, so lay the planning permit. Okay, I'll do it again. Take two. I would like to defer the motion, and I would like to lay the motion on the table that relates to the planning permit application.
10.4. No.
Okay, that relates to item number 10.4.
Lay item 10.4 on the table.
Okay.
That's what you said, Pete.
Yep. Lay item number 10.4 on the table.
Don't put any more pressure on Councillor.
Thank you very much. We had Councillor Summer.
Got it right.
Happy to second.
Thank you very much. Councillor Summer to second.
Future meeting or next month?
For the next council meeting.
Fair enough.
We would want to consider this in our next meeting and would want to have some reports and information before our next
for the
ordinary council meeting.
Okay. All those in favour? Against? Okay. Carried. Councillors, we now go to page 105, item 11, reports from councillors, nil received. Item 12, reports from special advisory committees, nil received. Item 13, notice of motion, amendment or rescission, nil received. Item 14, documents for signing and sealing, nil received.
All right, Madam Mayor, we didn't catch a seconder for the lay on.
Councillor Summer.
Councillor Summer.
Thank you.
She did.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, probably.
They couldn't see you, man.
Thank you.
Councillors, will now go to page 106, item 15.1, point of order. Councillors will now go to item 15.1, Councillors' Community Interaction and Briefing Program on page 106. There is a recommendation on page 107. Would a councillor like to move a motion,
Happy to
please?
move that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hazelman. Do I have a
happy to
seconder,
second it, Madam
please? Councillor Adam. Councillor Hazelman, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Adam.
Oh, no, thank you.
Any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion?
I will speak to the motion.
Thank you very much.
All these things are happening and a lot of people don't even realise they're on. So we are so lucky and so privileged to get invitations to any of these. And I've hardly gone to any because I'm working and I've got other things going on. But I know the Mayor does most of these. And it's such an eye-opener of what our community actually has and provides and things that we can do that are fun and mostly free and how engaged everybody is. So I recommend everybody to have a look through that because one of the things I'll miss as a councillor is attending these events. So.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 108, item 16, urgent business not included on the agenda. Nil received. Item 17, confidential management reports. And we have item 17.1, designation of confidentiality of information. Would a council please like to move the recommendation on page 108?
Madam Mayor, I'm happy to move the recommendation on page 106.
And what that is, please?
The council, pushing up to section 89.2H. It's getting fuzzy now. The Local Government Act 1999 resolved that the council meeting be closed to members of the public for consideration of a confidential item and permit officers to disclose any information necessary in relation to the confidential item to enable them to effectively implement the council decision.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. We now ask those in the gallery, please, to leave the room.